Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear us?
I can hear you.
Great. Thanks for coming. This is going to be a little special session today. You can ask the SEs anything today. Seán and I have been at Netlify for a little while now, and we've kind of seen and worked with pretty much all our major customers. And we're currently working on a bunch of AI initiatives and AX initiatives here at Netlify. So you know, I'm going to do a quick intro. My name's Anil. I'm one of the principal solutions engineer at Netlify. We work with customers from early startups to enterprises. We take them from conception all the way to go lives, and we're here to kind of answer any questions that you might have about Netlify or AI in general. Seán, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, Seán McTernan, also a principal solutions engineer here at Netlify. I've been here for 3 years. Pretty much, actually, most of my time at Netlify has now been involved with AI, which is kind of crazy to say because I think I pretty much had like 3 months at Netlify where AI wasn't a thing, and then it kind of came in, and that's been the dominant theme within Netlify for me. And yeah, like for the most part, it's been a kind of fun wave to ride, and yeah, here to idea the Q&A today is to just kind of drop some answers to some burning questions that folks might have, is kind of where our heads are at.
So we'll start off with a quick little poll too. Let's start with what tools are you into right now? Or what models you're using right now. So I'm going to click, you should have a poll on your screen right now. So feel free to answer the poll. It should be on your, right next to the chat, there should be like a poll area.
50-50. Oh, other. Interesting. Should we have been more specific?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what that other person is saying too. We'll kind of go into what we're using, and then we'll kind of ask the audience. So, Seán, what do you like to use when you are coding lately?
Oh, I'm okay. Let me start with I am very curious about GPT-5. It's been interesting, but I use Windsurf right now, and I haven't seen the option available. But again, things might have changed in the last 48 hours. But up until recently, I was using Anthropic's Claude Sonnet, I think was what I have like based inside my Windsurf browser. It's really good, but like pretty much every model that I've used has been, I have to give it a very pointed task to do. I don't want to give it wholesale access to my code base and just get it to make changes, because it starts to, I don't think it hallucinates, but it tries to do more than I really want it to. That's why GPT-5 seems very interesting, because it seems to just give you, even you were saying this, Anil, to me in Slack, that like it gives you kind of exactly what you want, as opposed to just trying to do a bunch of other things. But that's a very long answer, but yeah. Basically, Claude Sonnet is what I'm using.
Yeah, same. I'll kind of bounce around between Windsurf and Cursor. We're partnered with Windsurf right now, and what's cool about it is like, yeah, you can pick all the different models. I think they just GPT-5 literally is like less than a week old at this point. I think they have a one of the GPT-5 models right now in Windsurf. Whenever I'm kind of coding with these agentic IDE editors, though, I always make sure like I'm using the branching features inside of my Git repo, or I'm always frequently committing, because I'll find the same thing too, where it's like I need to give it very short, poignant tasks. Otherwise, things could go wild and lots of code could get changed in one outing. And then sometimes too, it's like if I don't like how something got developed, I can easily revert those changes too inside the editor too.
Yeah. I think the branching piece is like super important for me. And yeah, using the branch deploy feature a lot in Netlify because you can kind of see how it actually looks like pre-production. And you can kind of experiment on it. But yeah, I one of the things I noticed is that like the webinar I ran 2 weeks ago, I'm kind of like was trying to show that there's a lot of gates I'm trying to put in place, because when you're just like scrapping away at code and you're just trying to get something out the door, when you're committing, okay, maybe I could be doing this in a different way, but do you check every single file in your commit when you might have forgotten to check in, for example, with, you haven't checked in maybe like 30 minutes and you're like, oh shoot, there's like 5 files, I'm sure they're all fine, and you just commit.
I like to commit after I see the thing I'm working on working, and then I like to do checkpoints at like working stages
Yeah.
of iteration. So it's like, I don't know if I may not be paying attention if like one file was changed or 10 files are changed, but like the result I'm looking at and working with is working for the most part.
But so what I'm saying there is like, in the past, you knew that you worked on, main, you knew that you worked on app. You knew that you worked on, so it's like everything in the commit is exactly like, now I just think there's like creep into files that you didn't intend on touching. And that's where I'm like, I don't know what the solve is, because you just added some regex in the main that I didn't really intend on it being there, that kind of way. And you're like, oh, that's
in addition to just prompting inside of these cursor and windsurf environments, I like the Command K workflow, where it's like you just highlight like a little blurb of code, and then you press Command K, and then it opens up like an inline prompt on that bit of code. And that's kind of useful because it's kind of like, it's only like trying to, work with that little subset of code versus trying to bleed someone.
That's pretty much how I started, because I was using Copilot for the longest time, and you couldn't give it like wholesale access to the code base. So I pretty much had to like put individual snippets in chat and get it to, which I actually think is like, right now, if I was learning how to code, I think that's a pretty good way of doing it still, like the Command K workflow, as opposed to build me a banking app and then just have it like put like everything up, and it's like there's no security, there's no nothing,
we went from like a AI assist to like YOLO, just 5 code the whole thing in one shot.
Yeah. I think it's but I think like that Command K workflow is like very much what I still try to do. Like the example I have like offhand of okay, I needed to give it a very verbose task that I have no familiarity with. I was trying to get I was working in Vue, which was a new language to me, which I felt I got up to speed relatively well on it through the model. I still kind of went through a Vue course to understand just the basics of Vue, and just I felt that was a really good foundation to still do, even though like I did this like 4 months ago when I could have just like, build me a Vue app. I went through the whole course, like, I think it was a couple of hours or whatever of just like kind of building a storefront from scratch. But then, so I got the store up and running, and it was really good at like, making sure catching syntax and all that type of stuff. But then I was like, okay, I really want to turn this into a monorepo. So I was like, I tried to give the model, like, I was like, can you turn all of this into an NX monorepo? And that's when like I knew I was in a danger zone, because it just started to change absolutely everything across the code base, and I couldn't tell you, because I've no familiarity with monorepo structure outside of like how Netlify, is, and I know how to connect it to Netlify, I know how to do all that type of stuff, but the actual like working within a monorepo is not something I've done a lot, because I'm just for the most part just been a one-man team. that's where I was like, okay, I'm in a massive danger zone here. And number two, I couldn't get it to work at all. Like, and I didn't even know to where to troubleshoot on it. So
Yeah.
like, it's that perfect example of I've given the model way too much power. No, and I have no idea how to yield the result of that either. It's like,
Yeah. It's also, I wonder how well some of the new models might work because they are also increasing their context size. But on tasks like that, it can be so surgical and it needs to be precise in some ways that I can see that going kind of both ways. We got some people trickling in into the room. Um, this is for the people who kind of came late. My name is Anil. This is Seán, where you can ask us anything, ask us anything. I'm here to talk about Netlify and AI. What are some kind of questions do you have? We'll love to kind of we can kind of cover the gauntlet here. Or we can start with there's somebody on the poll too who picked other too. Would love to kind of know what other model you were using before, and then we can talk about that. Feel free to drop a question.
one of the things I didn't mention is that that's just for coding. I mentioned I used Anthropic's Claude, but kind of for day-to-day work stuff, because at Netlify we have access to Gemini. I use Gemini a ton I use the deep research feature a lot, actually. That's really, really good. It's good at just like getting me. I don't know, somebody had said this to me. It's really easy to critique something than to start from scratch. So like I'll get deep research to just do a deep research thing, and then I'll be like, okay, none of that's right, and I'll just start like tearing it down, but it might give me some insights in a certain topic. Like if I'm writing up a report or trying to do an analysis, like that's been super useful.
Yeah, I haven't, I probably use ChatGPT more than Gemini, but I like the deep research feature there too, because, I'm getting sources with all the different requests I'm getting to. So, and it's really interesting when you run these deep research on something that like you're kind of like an individual expert on too, because then it really shows you like, oh, is this in the ballpark or not? Like it kind of gives you extra trust. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a moment where people use AI and they realize like, oh, this actually knows just as much as I know it because I'm an expert in that thing, and that's kind of like a big, flipping point for a lot of people.
Oh shoot! So there was an actual because that's been the piece that I've always kind of felt a bit not defense. I felt a bit like secure in that. Like every time I get it to do deep research on a topic that I actually know, I'm like, well, that's not right. That's not right. But you say, sorry if I'm hearing that correctly, somebody on the podcast was like, I'm an expert in whatever field, and this nailed it. Is that kind of where?
Yeah. Oh. So it's like the deep research was kind of like accurate to the certain amount.
Wow. Because I remember when Grok was it, I don't know what the Grok model came out, and Elon was on X saying like, oh, it knew all of this from like material sciences and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to be completely true, because you're not a material scientist. So
yeah,
like I think that's kind of every time somebody's like, oh, it's going to take everyone's jobs and like legal or accounting, etc. It's like I've always like, well, has anyone actually spoken to legal and accounting about what this is doing? So
yeah,
it's like it's the grunt work is always going to get taken over by some tool. I think that's.
I always find it funny when they're like, this has beyond PhD level intelligence. It's like, I don't have PhD level questions to test out this with.
Whereas the best barbecue places in Atlanta is not exactly a PhD worthy subject. Yeah, that's pretty much. I did deep research on vehicles as well, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. We have like it came back with exactly what I would have expected with the answers. It's like it's the standard 4x4. Not that there's that many brands to come across, but Anyway, I don't want to rant on about my side. It looks like we're having a question in the chat there.
Yeah, we just got a question coming in from Jonathan. If you're venturing into a new space and aren't familiar with, are you using each model to compare their answers? Definitely concerned with stepping out of what I know and not knowing if there are security holes that I don't know to ask about.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's like, if you, on a topic that you completely don't know anything about, we're kind of like trusting the AI a lot to kind of provide the right answers. Is there something specific about that we can touch upon? I know that when I'm kind of messing, I feel like I use all these different models for different things at this point too. Like, I think I over-index myself on ChatGPT for information and summarizing tasks. Claude, obviously, for like coding related kind of tasks more than I would say knowledge. And, I'll use Grok if I want to kind of ask questions about the current, state of the world or, current events or something internet culture related. And yeah, Seán, any kind of comments about that?
Yeah, I think it falls back to in the previous webinar, I had referenced a quote. I really wish I could attribute it. Taylor knew exactly who said it because it was Taylor who posted it in our Slack channel. But it's like, nobody's going to pay you to vibe code, but people will pay you to be an AI assisted developer. And I think that that's really true, that like you still need to be an expert in the field to verify, like everybody, the way I see it is everybody's just become a manager and you still need to assess the work of your team, but your team is now an AI group of people, right? Like, so if I am the gatekeeper, if I'm the manager or the director or the VP or the CTO, et cetera, like there is like layers of quality control that is expected of you in that role. And I think a lot of people have just been elevated into that role and they need to quality control what's going through. So if like, I would say I wouldn't be comfortable, especially as it comes to like privacy and security, I wouldn't be comfortable doing anything like within an application without running it by somebody who's an expert in that field. A really good example of that is this happened recently. There was an application. I saw this. You follow Fireship.io, Anil, don't you? You watch them?
Great videos, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like really good. Like if you don't watch that on YouTube, it's a very good like tech summary of what's going on. And like it used to be all about tech, and it's kind of like, well, it is, but now it's like a lot of AI stuff coming out. And he does these reports, like the code report. And one of them was this. This guy tried to make an application for women to be able to discuss like good or bad dating experiences. I can't remember what it was. It was just like, and that was the whole shtick. But I think he vibe coded it and he accidentally like made the data of all of the contributors to that website public via a Firebase store.
Yeah, the T
and
app.
It was just, the T app, that was it. Yeah. And it was just a very good example to me of just like how like you can't, in the short term, at least, who knows what happens in 10 years, but like in the short term, just like take the experts out of this field and expect everything to go well. Like, because it's just such a dangerous thing to do. The consequences of it are just too immense. So to answer your question, Jonathan, it's like, I would probably just make sure that like I have some expertise in the field and just to know when I have tapped out of my expertise, especially as it comes to privacy and security, because I think that that's the piece that's like going to, privacy and security is out of two things that are the most important thing on the web in general, with no matter what you put up. If you're just doing a brochure site to say like, for your barbecue, I'm just going to keep referencing barbecues in Atlanta, like your barbecue store in Atlanta, then yeah, privacy is not. But the second you take users' information on board, I think that's when you need to make sure that there's an expert in the loop. Yeah,
same thing too with like payments, authentication, all really important parts to nail well. Yeah, with that T app, they had, it was something like an S3 bucket was exposed because they weren't properly set up. So it's like, those are situations where it's like, yeah, you still need to kind of understand the system design of everything to kind of make sure these things don't get leaked easily.
I think it was
At
like
Netlify,
it was more that, like, did it count as a burglary if your front door was literally wide open?
yeah,
Like, that's pretty much.
It's hacking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it wasn't hacking. It was literally just asking something that was publicly available. So yeah.
yeah. At Netlify, we've done a lot recently to kind of help with people doing agentic coding at Netlify to kind of keep these things secure. Um, Sean's actually going to be doing a talk about this, and there was one recently uploaded to YouTube too. So we'll pitch that in a minute. But we know with Netlify, a lot of times you're adding in different APIs or different services, and we make that really secure in a couple different ways. We have a secrets controller built into Netlify where the environment variables are pretty much double blind. You can set it once and it can only be referenced inside a code. And also too, during the build process, if you're coming from like a vibe coding tool or anything, if there's any like API keys inside of the code too, we'll prevent that from being deployed. So we're kind of trying to keep you all safe with all this as well too. And with Netlify's, you can, a lot of times customers are, they're branching off their main code and then they're working on an individual branch before they're going to production. We have a lot of different controls in place to keep those, branch and pre-production, areas secure before it goes live as well. Seán, do you want to kind of give a little teaser about what you're going to be talking about later this month or what you talked about on your recent video?
Yeah, it's pretty much like all around Jonathan's question there. It's the security holes piece. I'll try and drop a link in the chat, Jonathan. I did a whole webinar on this of trying to like catch security and the gates and quality controls that you can put in place. I'd recommend it. It's something that I was thinking quite a lot about. The secrets controller piece is something that, again, I have found we developed this way before agentic tools, and it's just become like a lot of the stuff we've developed at Netlify pre-AI days have actually become so relevant with AI because we were trying to foster to a new breed of developer that, pretty much in the past, like developers in the, way back when, they had to be a very certain mind that got into engineering that was willing to sit down and read a whole textbook on like C to be able to program their family computer. That was the way that people got into it. And I think like with tools like Netlify, it got people who were less capable of doing those things closer to the infrastructure through the Netlify gateway to to servers and serverless functions and so on. That like we had built all of these guardrails in place that you would have expected some developers to have caught, and we were just trying to catch. Like some more mature developers would have caught all of these things, but Netlify was just building those guardrails in place. And fast forward to like the last couple of years, now those guardrails are catching a whole new audience again, and their relevance is just becoming more and more pronounced because it's basically like, oh yeah, like don't deploy your environment keys into your Git repo because they will go public. And GitHub's actually pretty good at like warning you about that. They've been doing that for years. But if you did it and you deployed it to Netlify, like those keys could be exposed literally to the public. Your Stripe keys could actually get like put on the public facing internet.
Yeah.
Even if your GitHub repo was like private, Netlify could literally publish it in the code. And like we've built in steps to catch all of that stuff. It's like, hey, it looks like you're about to expose your environment variables. Did you want to do that? It's like, I'm going to fail the build and not put it out to the public.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like those security features are awesome. And like we also have, like when you go up to the enterprise, we have SSO features available for pre-production environments, so that again, like if you're deploying new experimental features or like basically you have people who are AI coding, the whole idea is that like that can be locked behind like Okta or something, so that will never actually get exposed to the internet unless you're logged in. So there's a whole suite of security tools that we have available for that type of thing.
Yeah, and you can always reach out to Netlify, and we can kind of walk through your organization, kind of make sure you're ready to kind of embark upon the AI journey, or working with anything on Netlify in general as well too. Great. I think we got a new question came in from Rajesh. If we decide to adopt AI coding, in for base code generation for a project, do we really need to spend a lot of time refining it for long-term upkeep purposes? Should we spend less time and focus on short-term requirements? Any suggestions? I think it depends. With AI workflows, there's a lot of great tools out there like Bolt and Lovable for site generation. Things like Bolt deploy directly to Netlify, and once it's deployed to Netlify, you can continue using Bolt to keep iterating on that site and updating your site to Netlify. I think short-term requirements, it all depends what kind of site this is. Is this like a marketing site? Is this a landing page? Is this sure, I'd say go for it. I start to think when you get into the realm of like authentication or databases or payments, you kind of need to make sure things are designed for the long term there too. You want to make sure like with those API calls, they're happening within a secure environment of Netlify functions. That allows the environment variable to never get leaked to the client side. You can protect those routes. You can set up rate limiting on those with Netlify. It all kind of depends on the project, but content only projects, I'd say you're probably good in the short term, but once you start handling PII or storing things, I think you need to kind of make sure your architecture is clean.
Yeah.
Seán, anything to add? Or
definitely, I think like, yeah, I would go back to it's the security piece that I'd be more concerned with than scaling, because like most of the tools you pick nowadays are going to be able to handle the load from what I can, like I will stand corrected on that one, but like I don't think like scaling is the problem that it was in the past, where it's like, oh, I better make sure this can horizontally scale or anything like that. Like I think the biggest thing, sorry, when I was scaling as it refers to load, but like when it comes to actually scaling an application, I think like yeah, back to exactly what you're saying, like the PII and the security piece is the bit that I would just make sure that I'm getting right from the jump. If you're just doing a brochure landing page for something, I would not think too much about it at all. Like it's not really going to be a problem, especially with tools like Netlify. I can understand if you're using Next.js and you're on your home server and you're using serverless functions and you're kind of doing server-side rendering and that type of thing, then yeah, you might need to scale. But if you're using like Netlify for those types of applications, then we'll be able to handle the load. But as it comes to the security piece, I think that's the bit you'd want to get right from the jump. Like I don't know how else to say it, but you kind of need to make sure you know what you're doing and not do any type of foolish things in the midterm. But I will also say that like there are tools getting very good at that as well. Like I started playing around with, in the video I just posted, I started playing around with CodeRabbit, which was doing, and you had mentioned, Anil, I think like Claude, what's the CLI tool? You can put it into your PRs as well.
Claude Code, yeah.
Yeah, and like if you gave it an instruction to be able to like find all of the security vulnerabilities in every single pull request, like that can at least set you up for success a lot more than if you knew nothing about security. You know what I mean? As in like, I would still recommend knowing about security, but like if you had somebody just catching you, like I think that's huge.
Agree. Yeah, I think even just like literally using your LLM against your code base, like what are the risks here with deploying this kind of application? I think they catch a good amount too. And I've heard a lot of good stuff about CodeRabbit. It's it can work right inside of your PRs. You can code review from different members of your team. You can update it with things like, oh, we don't do our variable names like that. We do this instead, and it'll learn those rules over time and kind of, correct the PR or leave comments. So, I think AI is being incorporated into every step of the CI/CD process now.
Yeah.
Um,
The only thing I would go back to, that the question would be like, the scaling now needs to be considered the cost, because I know Cursor's pricing, was a Cursor, their pricing just went like
yeah,
crazy high, crazy fast. And if you had a whole engineering team leaning on that at a certain cost, and now you just 5x or 10x your engineering budget because you got used to using these tools, then you have to ask yourself, like, does that scale? If I'm going to use
yeah,
this tool and they do a rug pull on the pricing model, like how much, how much can I really rely on this tool? And I think like everybody's going to have to ask that question eventually, as to, um, you know, is the tool we're using scalable? If the pricing, I strongly feel a lot of these AI models they are heavily backed by venture capital right now, so they're at a very nice like price point. But I don't think the price point actually reflects the cost of what they actually take to run, which means
yeah,
that the cost is only going to go up as the venture capital goes down. Like that's kind of the harsh reality with a lot of these things. Like the cost will go
yeah.
down over time, definitely, but like it doesn't. There's going to be that settling point that's significant. Well, I don't know if significantly, but it's definitely going to be higher than what it currently is.
Yeah, I think right now we're getting a lot of generosity from the inference providers, but yeah, I think it's like both subsidized at the same time, but also like there's not enough compute in the world for all the inference that we want to do at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a it's an interesting challenge for the foundational model providers.
yeah. I think I started to I started to use, by your recommendation, the Dia browser, and I'm like, I'm using it, and I'm like, I haven't jumped over my personal stuff onto it yet, because I'm like, oh, like I like using this to a certain degree, but I'm still holding it at arm's length, because I'm like, I'm not fully adopting. I'm actually jumping between Brave and Dia right now. And I think I do very like analog stuff on Brave, because I kind of trust it a bit more. Whereas Dia, I'm like, oh, what are you going to cost in the future? Or am I the product? Because
Yeah,
this is a lot of compute power. Are you just like sucking in all of my data and just like, is this just going to be Facebook all over again? Where I'm like, oh, I just gave away every single facet of my personality for free, and I was the product. That's kind of where my head's at with a lot of this, with the Dia stuff. I'm a bit holding
yeah.
it
For
on my own. Like,
people who don't know, there's kind of been these new agentic browsers popping up on the scene. One of them is Dia from the browser company who brought you Arc, and then the other one is Perplexity Comet from Perplexity. Both different approaches, both kind of subsidized right now. I think Dia might be invite only, so you'll have to kind of figure that out on your own. Same thing with Comet, but I've been really enjoying the Dia browser. It's a browser that allows you to, you know, pop open a chat tab and, ask, prompt against a web page, or, throw in a bunch of tabs and, prompt against that. It's been really useful for things like, like find me an open email, find me an open calendar slot, or, if I'm doing a product research, like here's like 3 Amazon tabs, like, compare and contrast these product offerings. And right now, this is all free and it works really well. And there's a lot of inference built into the app, but it's free. So it's kind of someone's
yeah,
paying for this at this moment.
someone's paying for this. That's kind of my concern. And again, I do want to loop this back to the engineering question, that like that's where the scaling with these models, because even with CodeRabbit, my trial ran out, and it's still, honestly, if I was in an engineering team, I think it would be a good shout to move towards. But like, I'd have to ask myself, how much, because they have to make money at the end of the day. Like every company, they're a company. That like, I would be, if I'm heavily leaning on these tools, the scaling cost is going to be a question too. Like you need to, I don't know how, I don't know what a realistic like multiplier of what the current value, what you're currently paying would be in the future, but like I think you should be at least ready for, you know, like 1.5 increase, if not a 2x increase in cost, and being like, can you actually afford that? And so
I think there's like an arms race going on with all the model providers, because some of them seem to be based in Azure or AWS cloud, but others, I think like Rock, have their own data center where they're doing everything on premise too. So I wonder how this will all play out with people who are running their inference on the cloud and they need to kind of constantly be scaling versus the teams that have their own data center of GPUs.
It's gone back to like cloud versus on-prem argument has just come up in a new way.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like full circle again. Exactly.
We're back to on-prem. Yeah. It's I know Meta are doing the same thing. Aren't they building like the super center? Isn't that the whole shtick that they're going for? Yeah. So I think
speaking of on-prem or local, has anyone ever used Ollama? So Ollama is a offline first way of interacting with models. So they recently added things like, DeepSeek, Qwen 3, I heard is really good for coding. They have the Llama 3.1 on there. They have the new OpenAI's open weight models on here now. I think the low version needs like 128 gigabytes of RAM, but for the OpenAI's open weight model. But for those who are interested in like privacy first or offline access into LLMs, this is like a popular tool. You can go into Ollama, download it, and some of the smaller models you can easily run on an 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte Mac, and you kind of have a offline version of this. I haven't used the open weight model yet. The 20 billion parameter version I feel like it needs like 128 gigabytes of RAM. So unfortunately my work laptop does not have that. But I've heard good things. And I've heard, I haven't really, even the ChatGPT 5, I've been hearing a lot of improvements to the coding capabilities, but with it being less than a week old, I don't have a full opinion yet.
Yeah. I was also just curious about that for running it. At the same question for Jonathan. I was going to ask if even for the lightweight model, could I use it? If you had that model available, like, can you select that as your destination model for the likes of Cursor and Windsurf? Can you set a local model?
I think there is plugins for all that too. I know like Zed has one. I'm sure I've seen a VS Code one. I'm sure there's way to do Ollama integration in Windsurf or Cursor or like some kind of workaround. There's also like CLI agentic runners that can hook into these things too. So you can definitely add this into like your coding pipeline. But yeah, I think right now the 20 billion parameter one needs some good space. So
I think you made me remember I did see a video from I was watching it this morning. I don't know. It was somebody from that telephone app Signal. And I didn't actually catch her title, but I'm assuming she was on engineering in some capacity. And she was just referencing about like we're running headfirst into like agentic runners to do things, which is I think in our paradigm has been great. Like it's been really good.
Do you want to explain what agentic runners are?
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. Kind of forgot that context is useful. So basically it's like the way we think about it at Netlify is you kind of can actually, CodeRabbit's actually a really good one. CodeRabbit is a very good example of an agentic runner where it will go off and do a task, and you set it on a task, it is able to run out and it can fetch code, and it can the more tool calls, you can set it up on an MCP server so it can call various different tools, so that the runner is like it's not just a prompt and an answer. It's literally prompt and then I'm going to do this. And once I have the answer to this, then I can do this. And then once I have an answer to this, it's like kind of like running through a task or a tool call. So I'd say maybe, I don't know if CodeRabbit's a great example, because I think they're just really just running one. They're just running against the code base. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be dead wrong. But the agentic runners that the lady from Signal was referring to is that, like, the example, she was like, you ask your AI agent, can you find a concert and book tickets for all my friends, and then send a message to all them telling them the date and such at the concert. So the agent goes out and it finds, like, a concert in wherever. It goes on to, it has full access to the browser. So it's then goes and it books the tickets, and then it basically goes and it has sends the email, like it has access to your email. So it forwards all of the tickets to your friends, and then it like goes to Signal and sends a message to all your friends. Right. And it's like, she was basically pointing out that in order to give one thing that much power, it needs root access on all of those services, which is extremely dangerous, because you've just put a single point failure on all of those services. Because the second that one agent is compromised, you've compromised literally everything that you own. Like before I had to log into Facebook, I had to log into this, I had to log into this. It was very, there was very few one source hacks that could have occurred. You could argue that 1Password and LastPass and all of those could have been that. But, if you've got 2FA set up, you can kind of prevent that as well. Whereas now it's like, we're just kind of jumping back from a security and going, hey, agent, I'm giving you root access to literally everything that I find important. And people are doing that in their personal lives. And I think it's only a matter of time before, like, people are going to be expected to do that at the company level. So they're just kind of throwing security out the window in favor of agentic runners, which is, I don't know. I think we're going too much in the extreme and it's going to level out. But right now it looks like we're running to a pretty big extreme right now when it comes to security. Yeah. But
it's two good points you talk about there. I want to first talk about the agentic runners too. Like, we're also seeing, and actually we're working on some things coming out real soon around this. But agentic runners are this new workflow that we're seeing in the wild. You can talk to, your PR, ask it to do like an asynchronous coding task. You can kick off multiple versions of this task, and you can get back like a version of your site that has the changes in it, and you can preview that and experiment with that before you push it out to production. So we're getting into, areas where, there's, a bug, somebody opens up an issue on GitHub. An agentic runner could go out and start to fix that issue behind the scenes before you even, assign a developer to it as well. So that's some really cool workflows that we're seeing right now. There's a lot of this is kind of powered by like Claude Code or Codex from OpenAI. On the second part too, with like getting into like agentic access to all these sites that you mentioned, it's like right now it's like free for all. It's like, here, give your access to everything, because you want your agentic thing to interact with all these like high level, root level permissions. I think there's so many different discussions out there, people trying to solve all this. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Will there have to be like special agentic, fingerprints and scopes for these things to mess with, root level accounts? I think it's still early days for all this.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, you have to keep up with the pace of change, but there's also, I have found that, if I was to rewind the clock to my first year at Netlify, there was so much concern about like privacy and security in general, and this was just for brochure applications, and people were scrutinizing Netlify every time I was on a deal. Like, they'd scrutinize Netlify to such a very, very, honestly, I think a pragmatic amount. They were just being pragmatic. However, like, now it's a case of like, okay, yeah, we're just going to put Anthropic into everybody's computer and it goes up to a cloud. We don't really know what it's doing. We don't know how much access it has. We don't know what the runner is going to do. And it's like, security teams are like, I would wager, they're just like, okay, we kind of need to just be okay with this, which is wild, like compared to how it was less than 3 years ago. It was like, now it's a case of we're just going to do everything because this is the pace of change and security is going out the window. I think it's setting everybody up for a major fall is my concern, is that when somebody's going to find like a key to these agent runners. And yeah, anyway, I'll take off the conspiracy thebrand hat. That's my concern.
I think there's a lot of challenges ahead for brand new folks coming into coding. I think there's a difference between developers using AI to kind of like increase their productivity. You expect hopefully they're paying attention to the code changes and making the right considerations with how the code is changing. But then there's also like the great thing too about AI is that it's also allowing everyone to kind of be a developer and build applications and deploy things that they never did too, and really empower them too. But there's a balance of making sure that the right guardrails are there, the right security precautions are being taken, and what they're shipping to the world is something that's secure and safe. So
yeah, I think the right guardrails is it's back to that first question of I think you still need experience. I feel that it's very much I felt this about 3 years ago, and I feel this now. The biggest concern I have with everything that's going on with AI is as junior developers. That's it. I still feel that concern is valid. That like, I don't know why there was motivation to pull people up into the industry because there was a lot of like grunt work and side tasks that people just didn't want to do. So they give it off to a junior, and the junior like learns along the way. Now the grunt work and side tasks can be done by agents and agentic runners and AI and that type of thing. And it's like, oh, like, are you setting yourself up for a big fall as a company if you're kind of locking, if none of the knowledge is being preserved within the engineering staff who kind of understood the steps to get to where they are? That's my concern, is that like, I think maybe documentation is just going to become more important. I don't really know, but that's kind of
I think documentation, a lot of these models now are doing planning steps and keeping track of like basically a to-do list inside of the repo, the historical context of Git commits, the historical context of GitHub issues. I think we're still a little bit away from having the perfect storm of everything coming together at the moment, but inching towards it in some optimistic way.
Yeah. If I was to spin the optimism on all of this, is that like every time I see people concerned about AI, they're looking at the problem through the lens of what they're used to, and they're not aware that like, okay, when it becomes a problem that these agents have like too much power, there will be a company who will come out and solve the problem of the agents of too, like, as in there's always just going to be somebody's always on the like keeping an eye out for like the next big opportunity. And I think like that makes me feel a bit better, that like, oh, it's a problem if the tool stack stays static, which it never will. So it's like, you kind of have to keep the optimism hat on when it comes to tech in general. It's different to what you have known, but then again, what most developers, what I had known, like it's funny, I ended up getting a job at Netlify, and then when I was doing my interview at Netlify, I went to sign up and I realized I already had signed up. And then I remembered a JavaScript course I did like 4 years beforehand, had like my first deployment in my entire life happened on Netlify. And it's like, so I learned how to code entirely on the Netlify paradigm, or how to code on the web and launch applications through Netlify. And I can guarantee that there's somebody 10 years older than me who'd be completely like appalled by like, wait, you don't know how to do this, this, and this. You don't know this architecture. And I'm like, well, it's working for me just fine right now. And I suppose like I'm the old guy in the
Yeah.
room going, "How dare you only learn AI and not know the fundamentals of code?" And I think you just have to be a bit self-aware on that front as well.
It reminds me of dating myself here, but in college, some of the older professors were telling me about punch card days, and it's like come a long way. We're approaching the end of this webinar. I think we have time for one more topic. Does anybody have anything we kind of want to mention? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up soon. But thanks for everybody for coming to the session too. We're experimenting with having SEs available. We have a lot of other webinars coming up with some of our developer experience folks. Follow Netlify on X or LinkedIn to kind of see all the latest posts that we're kind of coming out with. We have a bunch of new releases coming out in the fall that you'll definitely be hearing about. And with that, I think since there's no more questions, I think we're going to wrap here. But thanks, everybody. My name is Anil Bridgpal, and this is Seán McTernan. And thanks for coming. You'll see us again in the future.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.